Hey everybody, once again, welcome back to Terminus, the Temple OS of metal journalism. I am the death metal guy, aka Anonymous Gore Grind Project, secretly headed by Andrew WK.
That almost certainly exists.
I'm sure, yeah. No, that's very believable.
And I am the black metal guy, aka Bone Knight Melchior.
Is that a Dark Souls boss or something?
I just made it up.
It sounds like a Dark Souls boss or something.
It's very Dark Souls, yes.
Or maybe Demon Souls or something. I was listening to some of Andrew WK's old stuff the other day. That's how I came up with that one. He's an interesting guy, you know?
To party till you puke, or whatever?
The first one, I Get Wet. But I've also heard his old stuff with Wolf Eyes and some of his solo shit.
Yeah, that dude's basically cool in my book.
I honestly think he might be one of the only, honest people in, big music. I really think it was kind of an accident that he blew up. Because,
Sure, yeah. He was kind of taking the piss.
Yeah, I mean, even doing all that huge stuff, he was still doing, weird little projects on the side. You know, he never stopped doing noise music and stuff like that, so.
Yeah, I mean, I remember he liked Napalm Death and shit. There's also a pretty funny piece of Andrew WK lore, which is that, he went to some special arty school where they had to record art projects, senior projects, or whatever, and his senior project was a song that was like a sort of viscerally creepy, over-honest Scott Walker art ballad.
Oh, yeah, because it's about a girl that he was really fixated on, and he ended up,
it was a girl who went to the school.
And then he ended up, giving her a copy of it on tape or something, and I remember that article he wrote
and
about.
He got called into the principal's office for stalking.
Yeah, no, he wrote an article about it, and he was like, I should not be talking about this. This is a really bad moment for me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's...
I mean, that's cooler than... Just about anything else.
If he had been actually stalking her, that would have been bad. It's a, man, just teenage, sort of precocious teenage art rocker collides with
reality.
High school administration. Yes.
Definitely.
Okay, so.
We got a show. We have to do a show, don't we? Yeah. All right. So. Terminus News! You know, I gotta make a little jingle, a little, newscaster jingle. Maybe put, a helicopter sound effect in the background.
You should record a riff with a helicopter.
Ooh, that'd be good. All right, so, let's see. Last week, on episode 27, we were talking about the new label, Feral Heart Productions, I think it is. By our buddy Forlorn Spirit from Old Wangash, and we shared a little bit of his new project called Desert Eagle, and we promised to show off one of the other tapes that he's put out, and this one's a little bit different. This is a project called Sordid Crest, and he has released the one-track, 15-minute untitled demo by this project. I'm guessing these are friends of his. The personnel are split between Texas and New York, and Forlorn is from Texas originally, so I'm guessing he's got some roots with these guys. So let's just listen to a little snatch of this sprawling track and just give some initial impressions. that's actually that's pretty tight, I think.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's I appreciate that Forlorn is I mean, just already seeing this. I mean, like Desert Eagle, you can see how that comes from Ulduan Gash. This is coming from a really different place. So I appreciate that he's not keeping his first releases to one note or to kind of in the comfort zone, so to speak. What does this remind you of? Because this is, obviously there's a little bit of kind of orthodox dissonant stuff, but then there's some really big French melodies in there too, and it's all kind of wrapped up in this almost sort of industrial black metal kind of cold mechanical package.
Yeah, it's pretty consistent with the Ulduan goal of, making music that starts from a set of just melodic ideas that are important to the guitarist rather than a preconceived idea of what style it wants to be, right? That's how this sounds to me.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty original. I mean, I guess the general concept would just be, they describe it as what? Enchanted necromantic black metal. So it's kind of just like, what if vampiric black metal, but try?
Yeah.
And, it reminds me of Bakira a little bit. The French bit at the end with the hyperblast, the sort of more aggressive but still pretty necrotic French sound at the end. Reminds me a bit of Bakira. But
yeah. It also reminds me of
Vord.
Vord, yeah.
Vorde, which was an early House of First Light band that kind of disappeared.
Yeah. It also reminds me a little bit in fits and starts of some of the more aggressive stuff that was coming out on the unfortunately departed Pale Horse recordings. Stuff like Iminvocad and Thrael. Those were darker and more dissonant, but they had this sort of like hunched over barreling aggression to them amidst the kind of dissonant ideas. This is a more melodic take on that style, but this kind of reminds me of some of that.
Yeah, I think this is cool, and I like the drum sound.
I would say the production's a little bit too raw for my taste. Just because especially, you've got really distinct melodic ideas. I wish they had a little more room to breathe, but that's just my perspective on it.
I like that the drums are loud. You could clean it up and still have the loud drums. And I like that the guitars are high-end and trebly, but still have some body in them.
Yeah, they've got body and bite to them.
Yes. All right.
So, yeah, you can get that over on the Feral Heart Productions website, and let me pull it up. That's just feralheartprod.wordpress.com. It's all mail order right now.
And it looks like you can order direct from Feral Heart Prod at Proton Mail. This guy doesn't fuck around.
Yeah, he's got the Proton Mail and everything. Jesus.
Yeah.
All right, and next up, we got another blast from one of our friends from an earlier episode.
Oh yeah, so our adorable from I'm in a Coffin got in touch. I'm in a Coffin is something we talked about very early on. Do you remember what episode that was?
Oh, that would have been like episode 4 or something like that.
Something really early.
Single digits, definitely.
Yeah, and weirdly, that's been one of our best episodes long term. Like, people keep watching that one. I think because I'm in a Coffin promoted it a lot for us, which is cool.
Yeah, they did.
But they're like this. They have a very strong cult following, but they're this kind of crazily intense DSBM band that the death metal guy brought to the show. But this is his project of kind of American minor lore black metal.
Which is already a very cool concept.
Absolutely, yeah. So he's recorded between Salem, Massachusetts, haunted enough, and Denver, which I presume has a mining history to it. But so this is from the first track of this little EP, and it's the title track. It's called The Knocking. And this is from almost a minute in.
All right, let's check it out.
In a humble, cottage bedroom, in a remote, obscure hamlet, judges, jealous, rustics, the witness invisible. unknown to us. A trick of light.
Okay, that's really awesome.
Are you a man who knocks?
at the doorways of the earth. Ah, man, that is really cool. That's interesting. That's the last thing I would have expected from one of the members of I'm at a Coffin. This is very, well, one thing I gotta bring is that this actually reminds me a lot of some of the more, like, settled moments on Grand Declaration of War.
Yeah, actually, that's exactly what it sounds like. I knew that sounded familiar from something I'd heard recently. Mm-hmm. That kind of sliding, slithering guitar sound.
Those weird kind of climbing, like, half-dissonant leads and stuff like that.
And the idea that even though it's highly trench coat in the aesthetics, like, you know, late 90s, early 2000s, there's some kind of hellhammery thing under it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I love the, you know, the conviction with which he spits in a remote, obscure Hamlet. That's very Tom G. Warrior.
Really like the vocals. I really like
yes.
the bizarre declaration, because that's like Grand Declaration. That's like Maniac's very like declarative operatic stuff. It's really cool.
Right. There's a real attention to timing.
Yeah, there's some weird time signature play going on in some of that stuff.
And he makes the vocals just punch through the sound. Kind of this high shout that just punctures everything.
Yeah, it's like, it's too clear, like the enunciation it's designed to be heard, you know, the lyrics. Yeah, no, I like this a lot. And in his contact with us, he actually said that they are working on a full length now, so we'll definitely be covering that whenever that arrives. So yeah, that's our little roundup of our friends here on Terminus News. The helicopter spins down. Mm-hmm. So real quick housekeeping before we get into our rundown for today. As usual, social media. A lot of you guys have been you've been coming to my aid over on Facebook to try and balance out the numbers, where the Black Metal guy is massively in the lead on IG when it comes to followers. Those are rookie numbers. We need to pump those numbers up, and you can do that by joining me over at the Facebook at Terminus Podcast, or over on IG at Terminus Extreme Metal.
Don't listen to him. Only use Instagram.
Apparently that's where all the cool black metal guys congregate these days. I've never had an IG in my life. I don't understand the purpose of it. But, yeah.
I don't understand the purpose of it either, except it's really useful for networking. But don't worry, at least a third of my followers are bots.
Oh yeah, I mean that's as it should be.
Not bots, but weird kind of business networking accounts.
It's like LinkedIn for people who never went to college.
Certainly.
And then, if you really enjoy our content and you want to participate even more and develop that parasocial relationship further, consider giving us a little bit of money either on Patreon or Subscribestar. And you guys probably know it already. $3 gets you access to all of the Terminus Prime bonus episodes, and $5 and up gives you access to those, and the Terminus Black Circle, our Discord server where we discuss the finer points of forgotten Bathory albums and post funny internet black metal meets anime memes. Like we were saying last time, a couple more of you have started subscribing. We really appreciate that, and we appreciate everyone that has so far. Obviously, it's very difficult for us to make money in any normal way, just given the content of our show and how everything gets copyright claimed as soon as we post it. So, if you guys feel like contributing, feel free to join up with us. We're always active in the Discord, hanging out, and looking forward to talking to you guys some more. But, unfortunately, even without being paid, we do have a show to do. So we got another 4 records today, and your block is starting us off. So what have we got, Black Metal Guy, on your side?
All right. Well, we've got, first up, a new quote-unquote demo that is actually an EP, or a short full-length, by Azketem. This one is Inzernznytazure.
Inzernznytazure.
Inzernznytazure. Okay, yeah, that almost makes it sound Slavic. But this guy's German. I think some of the weird language on this might be Proto-Germanic or some shit. But it
also looks kind of Polish, maybe.
Well, yeah, you made it sound very Polish. Yeah, but dude is on some next level shit, and this is released independently on his Bandcamp, which is in a very strange shade of blue that will hurt your eyes, but in a good way, and is out on tape on Iron Bonehead, and it is described this as Teutonic forest black metal, sort of very nocturnal and strange.
Well, that's just catnip for you, isn't it? That description.
Indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I quite like it. Next up, also speaking of catnip for me, is another band in this sort of, you could say, nocturnal black metal vein, which is Isenscur, also very foresty. Isenscur means something like shower of arrows in Old English, the iron shower. This new one is called Asyndrath, which is probably might have something to do with sundering, I don't know. And it's out on his own label, Barghest, and out on some possibly inactive distro called Maleficentissimus Triumphatus. Barghest also hasn't been active in like 5 years. This guy, he hasn't put out a record since 2012. And now this one is a whopping double album of sort of battering, extremely second wave sounding English black metal.
Alrighty. So, for my half, we're going to dig back into death metal, as we only occasionally do, even though I'm the death metal guy. And this time, we're going to open up the back half with the first record. I guess they're trying to say it's a full length. It's like 20 minutes long, so I call it an EP, by Hanging Fortress, a record called Darkness Devours. This is kind of a death metal hardcore fusion, but not necessarily what you're imagining in your head. And this is out on Redefining Darkness Records. That's a label that they've done a fair number of releases, but they don't seem to have like a huge social media presence. I just see the name pop up here and there. Just kind of, doing modern, interesting death metal stuff for the most part, it seems like. And to close it out, we have the new full-length by Glistening, which is called The Anti-Natalist. And this is out on his own personal tape label, Extinctionist Records. I think he did an impressive run of 20 copies of this one on cassette. So yeah, if you want to get it from him, go over to Extinctionist Records and email him directly, because can't get it on Bandcamp. You got to order it from Discogs or via email. Real cult, weird DSBM stuff that has some pretty surprising influences, and given we've been on a DSBM kick for the past couple episodes, I think this will have a lot for our people to enjoy.
Yeah, you're kind of the death metal DSBM guy now.
Death metal, DSBM, funeral doom, gore grind, all the
Yeah.
the worst parts of every genre are what I'm
Miserable
into.
metal.
Yes.
That's,
Total misery. All right, so first up, Azketem. And how'd you find this guy? Just a random find?
yeah, it's just out now. This is one of those tape releases that's found its way to Iron Bonehead immediately. I think one thing that's characteristic of them is that they make a point of putting out tapes by kind of underground bands. So, like, especially by underground bands who are, like, pulling towards something a little more, a little punchier and more put together. I think Regain Records does that very well, too, with Helter Skelter. So this guy's probably just like a well-connected German BM dude. He's based out of Berlin, but clearly Berlin 3,000 years in the past, 2,500 years in the past. So what struck me about this immediately, and what will strike anyone immediately, is the bizarre and hilarious cover. How would you describe this death metal guy?
The sole member of the band is crudely photoshopped, more like cut out of paint, and placed with his arms outstretched in front of a forest landscape in, like you were saying, that eye-piercing shade of blue, with a very sort of nondescript logo and album title. It looks like the stuff that would be on like a lot of the CDRs I had back in the mid 2000s, just random demos and shit.
Yeah, I think this is one of the best album covers I've seen this year. This is somebody in the comments on the YouTube says it's a shitty cover, and how wrong is he? He is very wrong.
Well, I like how if you pull close into the cover, you can see the cut lines around him.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
Like
the trees are astonishingly low res.
Yeah, it's like he found a real low-res JPEG of some trees and just kind of cut himself onto it or something. I don't know, but I love it.
Yeah, this is sick. It's instantly got a lot of character, and it tells you that this is nocturnal forest BM with a strangely magical vibe, and that is how it sounds. So, yeah, what do I mean by, like, nocturnal? That's something we'll come back to a bit on this show. But I think we've both been talking about on this show about how the momentum with black metal seems to be with what you could call maybe solar metal or something.
Yeah.
Right?
This sort of much brighter sort of... the whole atmosphere of black metal has been considered to be wintry and nocturnal for the better part of 30 years, and it's only over the past, more than the past 5 when we talk about bands like Spite Extreme Wing or something like that. One of the forefathers of the solar idea.
Absolutely the forefather.
Yeah.
And I think as far as it getting used a lot, I remember Necropole released Solarite a while back.
Mm-hmm.
They would talk about their shit in that term. But you hear more and more guys from bands using that kind of adjective to capture what they're doing.
Yeah, doing summertime black metal.
Yeah, so you get it from Italy, you get it in French chivalric BM, arguably in a lot of the bands working in the Franco-Finnish style that aren't doing the necro-vampire thing.
Yeah.
And also in the kind of burly frontiersmen or Native American USBM we've been repping on this show really hard.
Yeah, I think that's a defining quality of a lot of the North American stuff now.
Or, yeah, Into Oblivion has that too, right? So
Old Long Gash is very summertime. Spring
exactly,
and summer.
Yeah. Summertime, sort of manly, forthright, chest thumping, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is very classically nighttime forest black metal.
Mm-hmm.
Not really Scandinavian sounding, but and what goes with that is it's got this unfashionable emphasis on deep, low-end power chords, and it has this sort of buzzing tone. Mm-hmm. And he seems to like power chords just as they are. And, and there is this insistence that that's the core of the music, as it was in, say, 1993 Scandinavia. The other things I'd link this to, I think, people often say German BM has never really found its sound. I think it is, really. I think it has found that sound by this time. There are a lot of different kinds of German bands imitating styles in other countries, but the German sound is, as I have on my notes here, crudely bashing barbarian black metal from the heart of the murky Teutonic forests. So I would say that this...
What would be a good example of that, just out of curiosity, from Germany?
I think certainly the original reference points for stompy mid-tempo German BM that are current reference points, right, are Absurd and Bilskirner, right? But the bands that are closer to this in sound and attitude, probably Moonblood and Thanor.
Thanor I've heard kind of kicked around, but I've never actually listened to.
Thanor I listened to a reasonable amount back in the day and found it interesting. It was so minimal and quote-unquote boring that I don't know that I totally appreciated it. If I listened to it now, I'd love it. It's just droning, pummeling, well-timed, interesting power chord BM that is kind of dark-sounding but doesn't really sound satanic. Moonblood, of course, is this thing that's been way more influential than I think people recognize, and was doing this kind of medieval-sounding, noble-sounding BM, maybe even before Satanic Warmaster was, in the late 90s. And also famously has that song Blut und Krieg that's basically literally 2 notes and is amazing. All right.
Let's open up with a sample and get an idea of what this sounds like.
All right, so this is my first sample from the title track, Inzernznytazure, and this is his sort of default non-climax sound. Okay?
Default non-climax. Like
yeah, just the solid rhythm riffing, right?
The bread and butter of the record.
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
All right, cool. Let's check that out. God, that's from something, that very last riff in the sample. I'm trying to remember what it's from. It's something fairly prominent in my memory. Except it's a Burzum riff. It's off, he's done kind of like a staggered version of it, but that's one of the burly riffs on Hvislaset Tar Os.
Oh,
that da 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 off the, like, the title track of Hvislaset.
Yeah, this record certainly doesn't, quote, sound like Burzum, but it's definitely in the tradition of sort of...
I would actually argue that Hivislicet, as far as, like, second wave stuff, that's what this approaches a lot of the time. And Hivislicet is a tough record to resemble. And he's obviously going about it his own way, but if there was a connection to the Scandinavian sound, I'd say that's the one.
That seems right for sure, yeah. Obviously a lot more triplets here, right? Burzum very driving 4/4. But, so what's important about this? Well, one, this is a drummer band.
It definitely is.
We said that about Pan American Native Front, too, a while back. This is... The power chords are important, but the thumping drum performance, right? Especially how it builds in this sample towards the end, right? Mm-hmm. He just starts, like, I always love the part where they just play one note. He just starts hitting, sort of doing this more rhythmic work, more just right-hand work, as you would say, on on one or two power chords, and just the drums pile on. And it sounds like what he's doing is taking a record that was a transitional record for Graveland and using that as the blueprint for a full sound, which is Carpathian Wolves.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Following the Voice of Blood.
No, I mean, it does sound like, the rhythmic ideas, like the sort of triplet rhythmic things, are definitely on Following the Voice of Blood. They're all over Graveland. They're also on Thousand Swords. It sounds like those records for sure, but both of those records have more of the kind of folk melody, droning, harmonized guitar parts.
Yeah.
Carpathian Wolves has a few of those, and those are the parts he chooses to develop, but most of it is just kind of bludgeoning power chords, sometimes slightly modified, and so it seems like he's taken this blueprint, and I think that record was also very important for some of the German bands, and he's taken that blueprint and turned it into kind of a, he's taken the things that Graveland moved past and turned it into a blueprint for, like, a whole style, upping the intensity of everything. So
yeah, I can see how this would connect to a lot of the other stuff that you like when you brought up on an episode a few weeks ago, Fawn Bearer. How do we turn this sort of just like bludgeoning, like deliberately simplified power chord black metal into its own route to branch off of? Now, obviously, the stuff this guy is doing is more complex than Fawn Bearer on just about every level, but you can see they're coming from a similar spirit.
Yeah, Fawn Bearer layers in a little more melody. Yeah, for sure. And this is, he's sort of like filling in. There's a lot of space in Barbarism Returns. That's both because I think sort of, the very rough performances of early Graveland, but also just how it's arranged. This is more like filling in all the possible space and compressing everything.
Yeah.
But let's listen to a little bit off Barbarism Returns, because I bet our fans are... Graveland's one of the few bands that I think, to my mind, has at least 8 records that are well worth hearing. And so some people may not have heard this one.
Okay.
And, some people may not have heard Graveland at all, but they are a historically important band, especially for stuff that's been written in the last 20 years.
All right, let's give it a shot.
Yeah, all right.
So I'm not a guy with a ton of Graveland knowledge. It's interesting hearing this earlier stuff and being like, oh, so this is when Graveland was still really into Darkthrone and stuff like that.
And Emperor.
Darkthrone and Emperor, but even the way he's using the keyboards there reminds me a little bit more of like sort of prog rock in a way. The kind of tones that he's choosing. I don't know. I think I've got a sneaking suspicion that Rob Darkin might secretly listen to a lot of like Jethro Tull or something. You know.
I think Jethro Tull. You've said that before in relation to similar bands. It's possible that Jethro Tull is like just low key kind of an influence on post second wave black metal in general.
Yeah, well, and I think that they were just really early guys to start playing around with some of those kind of theatrical medieval melodies in a way that a lot of people would be familiar with.
Yeah, I connect it to Emperor mostly because, it's got this sort of very low, pre-Nightside Emperor, it's got this very low-end guitar, coupled with kind of textural keys, but the keys here are even more primitive and simple, and the harmonies, I guess what you're pointing to is that the harmonies are a little weirder.
A little bit.
The Emperor stuff, the keyboards supply the big consonant melodic hooks.
Yeah, here they're just to back up, the general mood. I mean, those are just like very simple keyboard phrases. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I prefer this method for keyboards usually when it comes to
keyboards make it more dissonant, if anything. Yeah. Yeah. So I think our listeners could hear the similarities, right? Those kinds of loping 3/4 beats. That's the Graveland beat. And the way that he sort of he'll build the intensity by sort of piling on, doubling the speed of that kind of loping thing, right? Piling on more and more drums. Mm-hmm. And you can hear that because the guy in Azketem is a much better drummer than old Capricornus. He really can bring that out. Anyway, you have a reference point for this.
I do have a reference point for this, and it's a very weird thing to bring up. Now, let me preface this by saying I do not think that this sounds massively like the band that I'm about to show, but there was something very intuitive about what Azketem accessed for me, and that is, of all things, Sort Voctor. And if people aren't familiar with them, I mean, they were like a cool name drop thing back in the day for us, but I think they're basically forgotten now. So, Sort Voctor was a side project by Ildjarn, Nidhogg, and a couple other dudes. And they only ever released one record, which was called Folkloric Necro Metal, which is basically all four of them smoked a lot of weed. This is established in the history of them. They smoked a lot of weed.
Ildjarn smoked weed?
Yes, apparently all of them smoked a bunch of weed together. And I know, it's weird. Yeah, it ruins the whole image, doesn't it?
It changes the image a lot. Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean,
it makes sense.
Apparently they're all smoking weed. I don't know if Ildjarn took part. I would assume so, but whatever. So they smoked a bunch of weed, and on every song they would trade instruments. So it was just this bizarre black metal jam band experiment, but what they produced I actually like more than most of the Ildjarn solo stuff. It's very singular and very weird. So let's listen to a little snip off of a track called Frakilden til Tjernet, which saw folkloric necro metal. So let's check this out and let's see if you kind of get where I'm coming from on this comparison.
All right, sure.
Okay, how long has it been since you've listened to that Sword Factor record?
I think I checked it out a little bit years ago and was like, I need to listen to this at some point when I can pay attention to, and then forgot. So,
that's probably most people's experience.
yeah, but that's really good. Certainly a lot more listenable, right? Anybody who pretends to just listen to Ildjarn all the time is either lying or putting their Ildjarn on their tape player while they take Instagram photos, right?
Yeah.
You're either lying or you're not paying attention to it.
Yeah, like I respect what Ildjarn did, but it's basically just like not listenable to me. I think there's people who have imitated him, and I like that better, but it's just never been my thing. Sword Factor.
I like Ildjarn. But this is certainly has some of the Ildjarn impact, but the way it's chorded again sounds like kind of pre-Nightside Emperor. It's kind of
pre-Nightside Emperor, but it also sounds like it could be like I think this is way ahead of its time. Like some of the melodic, especially some of the later tracks where you get more of the synth stuff involved, sounds like a predecessor to a lot of the like raw tape black metal that you hear today.
That's yeah, it's kind of an intermediary stage. I think a lot of what people would hear as just, there are these shades of chording that give it a more pagan or foresty sound. And some of those are just on tracks like, Cosmic Keys to My Creation and Times, or whatever is what I mean. That kind of thick, buzzing, the two string, it's intermediary between the 2-string harmonies on that early Emperor stuff and then what becomes, say, the Graveland sound or the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but there's but to tie it to Azketem, there's something about this like thumping kind of, I don't know, like you like to say like ancient Indo-European sort of like thunking barbarian music, but with like this weirdly consonant melodic quality to it that immediately struck me as a point of comparison. And the fact that it's a forest in a weird shade of blue on the album cover doesn't hurt either. That's kind of a weird coincidence.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a spiritual affinity here. I hear that for sure. And I think this connects well to the Isenscur, too. It's just this whole alternate idea of what black metal that isn't exactly evil. Black metal has more of an earthy or pagan or witchy thing going on, could sound like. And, something that's neither solar metal nor, like, conspicuously, like, Heidi-ho Viking metal.
Yeah.
Nor evil satanic black metal.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to your next sample, because we've both got samples off this next track.
All right, so this one is sort of the centerpiece of the record. Would you agree?
I think so. I think that, if there's a criticism, I would say that the first full track, Ad Regnum Pervenire in Azketem, it's just kind of a non-starter for me. It doesn't do a whole lot.
I agree with you, yes. I think he's stronger in the mid-tempo stuff, and that first one, I think he's good using he can blast very fast, and he's good using the blast riffs for, like, punctuation and stuff. But that sort of, the first one just sounds like a blaze in the northern sky. His real home is this weird mid-tempo shit. So, her Deep Horizons to Vantonite Majesties. My sample is sort of from the beginning, and I'll just say, wait for the sick drop.
It is a pretty sick drop. I saw that note when I started listening to the album, and I paid attention for it, so let's go.
Nice. But yeah, so in the middle of that was when when you realize, oh, he's holding his hands out in front of him because he's tripping balls.
there, like I was saying with Sword Voctor, there is that kind of like drugged out in the forest quality to this, you know?
Oh man, the gong is what the gong kills me.
No, this is you're definitely right. This is the best track on the album. This is the one where it's all comes together because it's like the beginning I wasn't really feeling it, and then we got into the title track and it's like, okay, we're spinning up, and this is the one where I was like, okay, there's really something here. There's really something.
The longest track on it too.
They're all about all the main tracks are about 7 minutes long. Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
No, I think it's this is where he really hits his stride. This is the point of the project, I think.
Yeah, this is a lot of his. Yeah, so I mean, what's good there? Obviously, that sort of drop into that kind of droning Hades part at the beginning, I liked. Is he doing power chords the whole time here?
I think so. I think he's just kind of strumming away in the background.
So the thing that makes that also makes it stand out, I think, is he's using power chords with octaves, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. Which is something I wanted to point out with the Graveland sample, too, and forgot because both of our brains are broken today. But yeah, he's got, they're 3-string power chords, I think, which gives it a little bit of more of that tense, droning quality.
Yeah.
And, he uses them to play. Most people use it just to bash. He uses them to play melodies. And, the singing is great, that kind of little over thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, what did you make of that section?
Well, actually, a lot of, because my first sample is off the same song, so let's run through that and we can kind of combine them, because a lot of the shit that is in my sample that's worth talking about is also in yours after hearing yours. Sure. So let's run through this, just a couple minutes later in the song, and we'll just kind of piece them together. So yeah, this band is all about the clean vocals. It's all about those sort of chanting wizard vocals. Mm-hmm. It's like I wouldn't even call it. I wouldn't even call this pagan necessarily. This is more firmly kind of rooted in the realm of fantasy. It is by definition cool wizard music.
Yes, this is certainly cool wizard music.
It's but that was those moments. Also, there was some of the chanting stuff on yours, but when he really goes out with the clean vocals, I think he should just make the clean vocals his main mode of singing for this band. I think that would be really interesting. Really use that as a melodic voice to contrast these kind of just bludgeoning guitar ideas, and then as a result you get something that's just with that little change, putting the harsh stuff on the back burner, bringing the cleans up front, you get something very different from the rest of the stuff in the style, reaching back towards, kind of the tradition of Bathory and stuff like that.
Definitely sounds like a more trippy Bathory vocal. I don't know if I'd follow you on make that the default vocal, just because it sounds like he's exhaling. They're not very powerful vocals, you know what I mean? He's sort of like going her.
Oh, I'm cool with that. I don't care. It's like I'm fine with it. Well, I'm fine with it not being powerful. I'm fine with it being like trudging, drugged out forest wizard stuff, forest shaman stuff.
But there's a lot of power in those compressive war drum parts, and I think or the blasting towards the end, where he's blasting in a totally different way from the kind of Blaze in the Northern Sky stuff at the beginning. It's more like 6/8 blasting, which is he's really good at. But like this is, I don't know if I'd go there, because I like black metal to be aggressive. Right? But it's. I do think they're really good. I do think he should do more. I do think he could do more with that whole melodic kind of soaring passage. Mm-hmm. Which might relate to the weird flying vibe of his hands on the board.
Well, I think I'm also just you're much more interested in this sort of like very straightforward kind of stomping stuff than I am. Mm-hmm. So the things that I seized on this record are the more esoteric ones. The kind of foundation of the music in this sort of post-Graveland stomping sort of pseudo-pagan black metal doesn't really do that much for me on its own. But then, like, these little weird influences that he's bringing in here and there, that's what sets it apart, and as a result, that's what I am interested in him concentrating on, if you follow me.
Yeah, sure, I know. Yeah, I mean, at his best, he does both at the same time, I think.
Yeah, that's the ideal.
Yeah, it's, I think at his best, he's firing on both those syllables. I think cylinders, I think we both agree that the more just sort of straight up black metal sounding parts are the least interesting. I think that part really good. I agree with you that the eccentricities are good and those clean vocals. Anyway,
and speaking of eccentricities, so I don't do this a whole lot, but this is one that really grabbed me. There's 3 main tracks on this record, and there's a few more kind of interlude and intro things. But this one at the very end grabbed me. This is off the kind of outro track called Conks on Pax. Mm-hmm. So let's just listen to the back half of that running out the album. Can I just get a whole record of that? Just like weird wizard folk synths and like distorted 808 kick drums so far in the background they're almost inaudible, and some guy grumbling over it. Can I get a whole record of that shit, please?
The beginning of that I was not that into just because it sounded like dungeon synth, but the second half where all those different parts kicked in was really cool.
Yeah, I really like that, and I think that points to him listening to some of the really esoteric stuff in the German underground, like Corneus and all those other like
Bork.
Yeah, all those like super weird like electronic black projects that are kind of kicking around, and especially in Germany right now. And man, if we could get an album of like half droning folk chant trudge black metal and half autistic fucking electronic stompy wizard music ambient synth work, that may be album of the year for me, you know?
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Also, I remember, I forgot, I was gonna say, I think you're right about this not really being pagan black metal. I think it's more like, yeah, fantasy for sure. It's possible that the weird language all over this is just completely made up.
I think so. I think this is like his own little like internal fantasy world.
Latin in there, and he's got some, stuff like vagus or whatever sounds like it could be some sort of ancient European language. But I think that's the point. It sounds like it could be. He's starting from his artistic idea of things that are cool to be in his band, and they're all sort of swirling into the nexus of the music, right? And maybe through this, and the fantasy theme allows him to bring together these feelings that he likes. So, in that sense, I think it's much closer to the, quote, fantasy Satanism of the early second wave.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
The way it's sort of nature... Yeah, which we'll get into more with the next one.
And speaking of which, let's... I think we're pretty much in agreement. I think this is a good demo. I'm interested to see him elaborate on these, hopefully on a full length or something a little bit more complete. But yeah, I like this one. And let's take a quick break and come back with another record in a similar but also kind of different vein over from the UK.
This is a little one Gash, and you're listening to Terminus.
Alright, and we are back, and we've got Isenscur with Asyndrath. I think it's Asyndrath, because that's a thorn at the end, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Asyndrath, it's halfway between a TH and a D.
Oh, yeah, I always forget the Old Norse pronunciations.
Yeah, like Odin, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, and you said you heard the first one this guy did back in 2012?
Yeah, so this is... I think maybe I thought this band was more of a thing than they were. I had some friends who were really into the first record, which was called Monothylan, also Dylan, I don't know, also with a thorn in it.
Yeah.
I forget how to pronounce Y's in Old English. But I remember I heard it and it really approved of it. It was sort of like... It was not very approachable music, which I appreciated about it. And at the time, I liked it a lot, but I'm not sure I listened through the whole record. But it was this kind of burly, low-end heavy, buzzing, very second-wave sounding black metal that was not trying to please anyone with melodies.
Yeah.
But it sounded eccentric. It did not sound at all like down-the-line second-wave worship. And it had... this kind of earthy pagan vibe to it without it all sounding like, quote, pagan black metal or having songs that were like, OMG, Odin, you're the man. Right? It sort of, and it seemed to come from some real knowledge of the stuff. Like he had a song called Pool of Nerthus, which is like a Roman name for some obscure Germanic goddess. And a cool lyric that was something like, "The tower is breached." And that's all I remember of the record. And so it stuck with me. And so when this came out, I was like, oh shit, that band exists. Similar sound, I think, overall. And what it has in common with, as I've said this at the beginning of the show, but what it has in common with the Azketem is that this is extremely nocturnal black metal at a time when that is unfashionable. And it has this kind of more night side pagan attitude, but with a more overtly satanic bent. So it's got some quotation on it. I sweeten in him the love of sins. I ignite such sins in him that he abandons prayer as though on fire. So this is coming from some, Christian writing, probably from the Middle Ages, about the devil. And I think what this guy does that is smart and cool on this record is he takes that fantasy Satanism idea from the Old Norse stuff, where it's all this, the devil and Odin and Nietzsche and all this stuff kind of collapsing together and around kind of fantasy imagery. And where a lot of bands have moved, either they've become like theistic Satanists or they've become heathens or whatever, right? This guy's fixed on that idea, and he's deepened it from this historical and ethnographic thing, and he's refigured it as kind of folk horror. Are you familiar with that genre?
I mean, I've heard the terminology, but I guess I didn't think of it as a like an established genre.
Yeah, it kind of gets bandied around the internet as a genre. It's the idea of, stuff like, the classic is The Wicker Man, of course, right? Or like more recently something like Midsummer or whatever. So, the city people go into the forest and they find the people there strangely appealing, but also sort of repellent and disturbing. And then it turns out that their rituals are, their queer folkways are actually sort of violent, sort of satanic, crypto-pagan rituals, right? And then the city folk are like, oh god, this is horrible, and they have to flee. And so there's this long tradition of, inverting that. And this guy seems to be talking specifically about ergotism, which is a sickness you'd get from grain fungus, which they called holy fire in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, it's sort of like a hallucinogenic thing, right? Yeah,
so it's kind of like, this is sort of paganism from the post-Christian perspective, where it's perceived as the devil. Like, the Odin was a word for the devil in medieval Scandinavia. Or in Greece, up to this day, or up to the late 19th, early 20th century, people saw the eagle as an ill omen, because it's the bird of Zeus. So this is something about this foreboding, menacing power from the forest, and and people going twitching insane from infected grain.
No, it's conceptually super cool.
All right, so what do you think? What's your take?
It's conceptually super cool, and it is possibly the boringest thing we've ever covered on the show for me. It's none of this is bad. This is not a bad record by any means, but it is. One thing is, it's we should say up front, this is a 2-disc record. It's about 100 minutes long, and it is a slog to get through. I got through it all in one sitting, which is maybe not the way this is supposed to be listened to.
I mean, preparing for a show like this, also listening to a double album is a lot of work. Yeah,
it is a lot of work, and it definitely. I'll try and be charitable and say, when I had gotten back from a long drive from across the state to visit family and everything. I was like, fuck, I gotta prepare for the show. All right, let's at least knock this out. But man, there's just very little on this record that grabs me. It sort of deliberately, and I appreciate the fact that it almost sort of deliberately stays away from like big climactic stuff. It seems to like resist the urge to do the conventional black metal thing in terms of structure. But when you're dealing with a record where the average song length is in excess of 10 minutes, it's just tough, man. And you see the double album, you expect something a little bit more ostentatious. No, this is very willing to kind of trudge through those 100 minutes. But honestly, now that I'm, at least a little more fresh. I'm kind of interested to hear some of this stuff again and see if it makes me reevaluate and wonder if it was just like a bad timing on my part. So let's get to your first sample and let's kind of dig through it and see how I approach it with fresher ears.
Yeah, so, I mean, the things I'll just immediately say up front, agree that as a double album, this is a little long. I think the second half is considerably has more memorable songwriting than the first.
The second disc is much stronger to me.
It's also really like 3 records because the last track is 24 minutes long and it should have been released as a standalone EP.
Yeah.
But and also just is kind of baggy in and of itself. But I think what's happened is this guy hasn't released a record in 8 years, so he just unloaded it all.
Yeah.
So what that makes as a listening experience is, maybe, don't listen to these all back-to-back preparing for your extreme metal radio show. But if you're not time-pressured in that way, it might be easier to break it up. Anyway, let's start with... So what I love is how it resists that climactic thing. Mm-hmm. And it's not hook-driven, it doesn't have... It's totally outside the contemporary Franco-Finnish thing. It is stubborn and highly rooted in Norway between 92 and 96. So let's start with let's start with On Dawn. This is just, the first half of the record especially is just very second wave, very just grim pounding power chord riffs. And yet, I enjoyed it. I see why you don't, because that's not really your thing. But let's start on one of the, quote, boring riffs that I most enjoyed from Dawn.
Let's try it out. Okay, so that's actually kind of interesting because I'll give it credit, there's textural stuff on the first disc, which is interesting.
Exactly. So what do you mean?
Oh, well, I mean, that's basically just purely bass-driven. Like, I mean, there's some guitar in there, but the entire main instrument there is the bass, and there's some pretty interesting bass ideas across this whole record. But what I mean by textural is just kind of the timbre and, like, the overall sound of the music is not what you would associate with black metal, even though it is clearly black metal. So that's very interesting. And that's something I liked. This reminds me a little bit of a very forgotten band who's also from the UK called Black Vomit, who did a couple records back in the day, and they did a very weird sort of everything in the kitchen sink thing where it was black metal. And there was also weird electronic and noise stuff and some industrial stuff and some kind of progressive ideas. But it hung together as, you know, the albums hung together well because they were unified by a certain aesthetic of just kind of like grimy, weird, otherworldly, sort of like like nature, but nature is sick, if that makes any sense, you know. So, and actually this strikes me, especially that passage strikes me so much of them, I'm wondering if they might be associated in some way. I think, actually imagine remembering some of the connections between Black Vomit and some buddies of mine and what I think might be another project of the same guy. I think they might be affiliated with each other, but that would totally dox me.
Are you remembering the name right now? Because I just looked it up on MA and I don't see... You might be slightly misremembering the name because I don't see a Black Vomit from the UK, at least on MA. They're not really reliable for new stuff anymore, but they're pretty reliable for old stuff.
Let me see. Not Black Vomit. You're right. I guess that wasn't correct. Oh no! Well, it's a Black Vomit that is not.
Also, all the different variations on Black Vomit on MA are very funny.
No, it is not. They're not on MA. They are not considered a metal band for MA. It's Black Vomit with a record called Jungle Death. Was one that I enjoyed a lot. So yeah, not on MA. I guess they weren't considered black metal enough. I think of them as a black metal band, whatever. You know, they were more in that kind of...
People think of it as hardcore?
No, more in that black noise milieu. Mm-hmm. You know?
Well, yeah, this is certainly gritty music.
And I just realized on Jungle Death there's a reference to Aragot there, so okay. Huh.
Oh, damn, dude.
We just cracked the code.
Yeah, shit. Alright, yeah. So... There aren't names on the Black Vomit thing, are there?
Like for the members?
We don't want to dox him, yeah.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
I mean...
Alright, but, yeah, that's also one of those Rusty Axe things that we both liked back in the day. So,
yeah, Rusty Axe was very cool.
So, anyway, very gritty, yes, definitely. You know, I mean, this is, you know, you're in a village, there are peasants, there is dirt and misery. And yeah, the tone is like, it's unlike black metal normally, but it's also not really like anything else. It's got like this woody bassy tone, like, or this woody this resonant kind of sound, you know? The guitars are kind of boxy and low, buzzing, and yeah, it's got like bulldozer bass that you would get from Discharge or Venom.
Or Godflesh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's got a very English... That's one of the things that makes it very English, I think, is that bass tone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's got heavy without being a wall of sound. There's a lot of different, distinct bass and guitar tiers. And the other thing that struck me about that is that they just go to this 1-2 beat thing, which you think would be the least rhythmically interesting, but it's got deep groove. It sounds... I bet this is a one-man project, but it sounds like a band.
Yeah.
And they're just exactly where he's hitting. They're just... It's hard to express, but I think there's a deep sense of groove in that passage that might have something to do with it being slightly slower than you'd expect.
Yeah, I get that.
And those drum accents at the end, you know, as it decelerated, you know, dum-dum-dum, you know, sort of like Hellhammer thumping on the toms. I like those kind of touches here, and I just enjoy listening to the sounds. Does that make sense?
No, I get it. Yeah, it's like when it's kind of sound driven, that's pretty cool. I guess, I mean, for me, it's just a matter of. I mean, that's not typically what I'm listening to black metal for, and
I have more time for this kind of riffing than you do.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I guess.
Yeah, it's and you also tend not to like mid-tempo stuff. Even the fast parts on this are kind of mid-tempo, especially on the first half of the record. Mm-hmm. I spend a lot of time walking around. This is good walking around music.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, okay. Well, let me get to a part that I did enjoy, and this is where we get into the second half, the second disc. Because honestly, for me, there is very little on the first disc that caught my attention at all. It wasn't until the second disc where my ears started to perk up, and I think I'm pretty sure this album was recorded in a few different recording sessions.
Probably. That would make sense.
There's some like fluctuation in production and everything, and then I think the production also takes a step up on the second side. So this is off the first big track Actually, no, it's the opening track off the second side. It's called "A Cross Sable Upon a Field Ore." All right, sure. And we're just going to listen to the kind of closing.
Maybe it means ore as in gold, O-R, like door, like so. It's like sable and like medieval heraldic terms.
Oh, maybe.
But anyway,
fuck fine, man.
Yeah.
I'm not that good with shit like that. So let's listen to the closing couple minutes of this track. All right, kids, there's your one big moment on the album. I hope you enjoyed it. It is a very good one, though. And I like this a lot because it makes me think of sort of an Anglo reinterpretation of like a Roman Sanko melody.
Yeah, I got that kind of yearning quality to it.
Yeah, and with the whole kind of peasant vibe of this record, I think it works. I really like the kind of like spoken, clean stuff vocally. It reminds me a lot of some of the really peasant-feeling stuff off that They Came From Visions record we covered a few weeks back.
Oh, that particular riff does, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, just that really drawn-out kind of looping, trot on horseback pace, Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. And that's the moment where I was like, okay, so there is stuff on this record that I do like, and that I find interesting.
I think the second half has a lot more Slavic influence in general. I mean, my guess is that these were composed at different times. Mm-hmm. Or maybe he just writes in these two modes and separated them out later. But, lot more still lots of ripping second wave on the second part, but lots of Slavic stuff for sure. Anything else you wanted to say about that, or just cool big moment?
Really just cool big moment. I like that it's this is about as close as the record gets to a climax, and it's still kind of muted, and I appreciate... I like the fact that this is an unsentimental, weird, kind of removed record. I do like that a lot. And I think there's a way to do this music while still having these distinct melodic ideas that grab you, And
so
I think that's
like
an example.
a little more semi... a little more sort of semi-climactic moments throughout it.
Or just bigger riffs, just kind of... And I'll totally admit, this may just not be my thing, Mm-hmm. I can accept when something is just, like, outside of my wheelhouse. And this might be a case, because it's like, I can't bring myself to say there's anything bad on this record. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just outside of my interests,
Yeah, I think it's just stylistically different. I think you are less interested in hearing people do stuff that's really rooted in second wave rhythm guitar than I am. The Vong and the Panzer War have been real exceptions for you. I'm honestly surprised you liked those as much as you did.
Well, the Vong I did like a lot more than the Panzer War, actually.
Fair enough. Yeah. No, you definitely did.
Yeah.
Well, the Vong had this atmospheric thing going on.
Yeah.
This
like,
is...
I don't really like second wave on its own.
How does this differ from the Vong to you? Because there are serious differences, obviously. But how would you express the difference?
Well,
so for listeners who haven't heard that one, Vong is this Vietnamese band that has a very Dark Throne Burzum sound, lots of power chords, but doesn't really... sounds pretty original.
Yeah. Well, Vong has giant riffs in it. Despite how kind of thin and trebly the production is, it has riffs with huge weight. You know, like I was talking about those sawing slide riffs that he's really into, those kind of Dark Throne breakdown riffs. Those are great. There is I appreciate the atmosphere on this Isenscur record, rather. But that one felt a little bit more immediately gripping. There was a real unity between kind of the ghostly sound of the music with the lyrics and the cover art. I do appreciate sort of aesthetic unity like that a whole lot. And yeah, it's just like it's more exciting music in general. I mean, you know, this is, like I said up front, this is music that is deliberately trying to strip out some of the standard arc of a song. And I appreciate that. It just doesn't really land for me, you know?
All right, fair enough. Yeah, so I would agree that, yeah, in terms of melodic imagination, the first half is not where it's at. I do think there is some good second wave rhythm riffing on it. However, this is, I think there's a lot of big riffs. To me, there are a lot of big riffs on the second half. So this I would give... the Isenscur, the sort of, I think also Tyrant Spell just rips all the way through, but Isenscur is the sort of, the band name track.
Yeah.
I really like. For me, this is pretty much a perfect song. And I'm going to do a quick 2-part sample. Here is a very fast part.
All right. Okay, so you like it because it's peasant black metal that sounds like Discharge. I get it.
Yeah. It's like, could you please put a little more Hate Forest in my Discharge? Okay, very nice, thank you. Wow. It's got that sort of, it's got this, so, you know, it has that sort of biting, half melodic quality that I like in riffs.
Yeah.
That sort of weird, skronky, droning Hate Forest slide riff.
Yeah.
It's ripping. Yeah, I got that sort of double bass power and it sounds like Discharge. And the cool the breakdown part, very simple note choice, but more consonant, gives it a bit of a release, and it has that kind of like halfway between hardcore and Burzum quality.
Yeah, I get that. Like the first Burzum record.
Yeah, a little bit like a bit like that Vong breakdown I really like. Sort of chest-thumping, crazy wild man Burzum.
Okay, I can see where you're coming from on that.
Okay, fair enough. So, and here is what I consider the big moment of the record. You're gonna crack up when you hear this. Okay. But this is from the second part of the song.
Right, let's try it out. Black metal guy, are you saying that you enjoy the Graveland part? Are you saying that the Graveland part is the center of the album? Who would have fucking thought?
Man, that part is so good. I like that feedback at the beginning of it too. It opens up and then the inevitability of that drop, because you could have, after repeating it a couple times on the acoustic, you could have it drop and not be that exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, the way he piles in on that with the drums and the playing, and it's a cool riff that doesn't exactly sound like Graveland. Yeah, I really like that part. What can I say?
You're so invested in like the physicality of black metal. Why did you ever stop listening to hardcore? It's like...
I didn't.
Well, yeah, no. I was about to correct myself. I guess you didn't, but it's like, why did you ever branch out from there if that's what you're looking for?
Yeah, it's I mean, this is, yeah, I like very physical black metal. This is extremely physical. He has a good sense of that sort of microscopic tension and release within each riff that makes also good hardcore bands. And yeah, I mean, I think this guy has very dissimilar taste in music to you and extremely similar taste in music.
I can see that, because I was actually kind of ruminating while these samples were playing.
Like, I do talk... say what you're going to say, yeah.
Well, no, I think kind of clarifying the distinction between you being the black metal guy and me being the death metal guy. Mm-hmm. I think that is true, but not in the way those names imply, because I think what it really reflects is you have a more inherent appreciation of just the foundational technique and aesthetic of black metal. Mm-hmm. You will take a random black metal CD and find more to enjoy in it, and it's the opposite in terms of death metal for me, you know?
Yeah,
I think that's the best way to describe it.
If you played me something from the late 90s and was like, sounds like Suffocation and Deicide and it's really good, I might just be like...
It wouldn't sound like anything to you. Yeah,
I'd say, I trust you, bro. You know, like...
I think this is one of the rare situations where we're running into that. Because, like, that sample, it's like, it's fine, but it does nothing for me, you know?
Yeah, this is black metal for black metal, as the Rival Mob said with hardcore for hardcore. It's like, you like the black metal you like a ton, and you know... Probably in quantitative terms, you easily know... I mean, you know way more about black metal than I know about death metal. And also, in sheer quantitative terms, you may know more black metal bands than I do.
Well, possibly, but that's what...
You're more of a metal guy from the beginning.
I'm more of a regular metalhead than you. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a whole discussion there about, like, a whole... Not parallel universe, but a different kind of metalhead that came in through black metal, and that kind of changes the whole way they perceive everything. I'm not too caught up in the distinction of like, oh, how many bands do I know? Shit like that.
I know. I'm just saying for the sake of our listeners, it's like, you know a lot. Yeah, I would say that this record has some specifically black... I would say you tend to be more interested in the eccentric peripheries or sort of catchy, melodic... progressions of black metal.
Definitely, yeah. I listen to black metal for its melodies. I listen to death metal when I want to put a record on, you know?
Yeah, and when you want something that gives you that sort of bashing feeling, you put death metal on.
Yeah, I think that's that's another thing. It's like a lot of this kind of like dischargy, like burly pounding black metal stuff you like. It's like, for me, I just grew up with death metal. I just go to that. You know, it's not the place that I go for it.
Well, back in the day, I definitely listened to more sort of like dark, throny, just kind of unpleasant, grinding power chord shit. I do that so much now. But for me, this band is at a good midpoint between stuff that has the more kind of, the more Slavonic heathen sense of melody and that thing that originally drew me to black metal.
Okay,
like
I get that.
You know, when I first walked into... I remember one of the first really cult CDs I picked up at Hospital Productions in New York City, and I walked in and I asked the dude, "Hey, do you have anything that's like black metal but with like really beefy discharge riffs?" This was back in like 2008 or something.
And that would have been the guy, right?
Well, it was his friend, and he said, "I'm not sure, but hang on, let me call Dominic. He's at a festival."
I was about to say, I spaced on the name, but yeah, Dominic Furnow, yeah.
No, so he called Prurient, who was at a fest, and Prurient picked up and was like, "Oh yeah, give him the Malveillons."
Oh, that's how you got into Malveillons?
Yeah.
I just had friends with labels in Canada, and I just got through that way. That's funny. But
anyway.
So to get back to it, so talking about the fringe edges of black metal. Okay, my second sample. Here's an example of Isenscur doing it really well, and this off the second to last track. It's called Imprisonment. So let's give this part a try, and I think this is one that you'll really enjoy too.
Oh, I do, yeah.
This one's for you. All right, let's do it. All right, so can I mean, based on your pedigree, you're the person that can be saying this, but
you say what you say it. We had a great time listening to that one.
Yeah,
lots of chatter.
Where's the fucking Isenscur goth rock album? Mm-hmm. Because this is probably my favorite track because it is in large part just a fusion of black metal and goth rock, like the best parts of something like you ever listen to Black Crucifixion?
No, I don't. I keep confusing them with Black Crucifix, you know.
Black Crucifixion, they were like buddies of Beherit back in the day. Like, really, they did a couple demo tapes, never went anywhere, broke up, got back together as a goth rock band with these weird black metal touches a bunch of years later. Very good. You would probably enjoy it a lot.
Faustian Dream.
Yeah, Faustian Dream is tight.
That sounds like it. I would enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good goth rock record. What this also reminds me of a lot, especially with those like chiming synths, is we mentioned them way back, but we should always mention them. Is Seer Bliss, the coolest goth rock band that accidentally became a metal band ever? You know?
Yeah, I hear that for Seer Bliss. It's Yeah, this is really good. I mean, he certainly could. I hope he writes another album sooner than 8 years from now. Yeah, he could definitely, if he wants to. I feel like he has. He's definitely done this sound. This album, like 2 discs of this sound, he's done. So if he wants to branch out some, more stuff in this vein would be great. I mean, it's also. He's come up with some kind of good answers to what English black metal sounds like. It sounds, it's not like Venom worship, but it sounds like Discharge and Venom. And then another version of that would be, or it sounds sort of gritty and peasanty, kind of earthen, Saxon. Also, another good version of it here would be, it sounds like Fields of the Nephilim.
Yeah.
Who
Definitely.
If anyone anticipated black metal second wave guitars technique before the fact, it was them.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole idea of like, let's have these kinds of like glistening minor key melodies with sort of aggressive vocals.
Yeah.
6-minute songs. Yeah.
No, I think you know what this guy is? This guy is one of the dudes from my local scene who is an incredibly cool guy who I hang out with, and we show each other our music. We always go out to each other's new band's shows, and we get off stage, and it's like, "What do you think?" And both me and him at the same time will be like, "Not into what you're doing, but dude, I'm glad you're enjoying it," you know? And we laugh, and we drink beers, and we talk about music. We don't agree on anything, and we depart even better friends. You know, that's the vibe I get. You know,
yeah, the vibe I get is that this dude is real as fuck. Yes,
he's definitely real. I don't doubt the commitment to the shit.
Yeah.
Like, I always want to stress that, because that became, especially when we were coming up, it became this default thing of like, oh, I don't think they're for real about it. No, I think this guy's for real about it. I hate the accusations of, oh, you're not, like, real, or whatever the fuck.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He was, I think and one reason I came back to this and remembered it was in 2012, which was real dark days for this genre.
Yeah.
He put out something that was that authentic back then. And I think that's one reason I remembered this band. But, cool. So not your thing. I appreciate this a lot. I could say other critical things about Citrinitas, but I will not.
It should have just been its own thing. I think that maybe this record should have been split up between a few different splits. That's kind of the idea that I get. Maybe there's one album and a couple splits out of this record.
Yeah, but I like this guy's taste in music. I would like to hear something new sooner. I hope this means Isenscur is back.
Yeah. So, did you have a plan for an interlude track, or should I jump in?
Gosh, buddy, I haven't thought about that at all today.
Okay, well, going back to the first record, German black metal, and kind of fusing with this one and some of the other bands we've been talking about, psychedelic, slow German black metal, adjacent to Ruins of Beverost because it's on Von Records, but basically forgotten by most of the scene. A band called Verdunkeln.
Oh, I love Verdunkeln.
Oh, yeah.
I was gonna mention that in connection to the first band.
Oh, well, there we go. It's perfect. Great minds. We got that fucking connection, man.
Also, music that was good in 2012.
Yes, because I think that I was... actually, this is from 2007.
They put out something later.
Yeah, they did put out a later record, but this is off their second record. I believe it's their second, Einblick in dem Qualenfall. And this is the second track off that called Im Zwiespalt. So, let's let the kids listen to this, and we will be back on the back half of our recording. right, we are back after Verdunkeln, and I've been terrible about this on the past 20 episodes or so, but I know we're supposed to plug our shit again at the midpoint. If you're still listening, hello, you're one of the dedicated few. And if you want to keep abreast of what we're doing, feel free to follow us on Facebook at Terminus Podcast or on Instagram at Terminus Extreme Metal. And as always, feel free to contribute and subscribe on Patreon or Subscribestar for our bonus episodes and access to the Terminus Black Circle, our private Discord channel where we talk about how Requiem is secretly one of the best Bathory albums. And everyone gets drunk on Fridays together. So, all right. So next up, Hanging Fortress with Darkness Devours. This was a random find on my part. Not familiar with these guys.
Cool band name.
Very, very cool band name. I have no idea what it means. Like hanging gardens, but a fortress. That's tight.
I think it's hanging upside down from the roof of a cave or the roof of the cosmos, like a fucking bat.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that all works.
Yeah.
Also, yeah. It's weird to say this, but I really like the album art, which looks like a forgotten mid-90s death metal album. It's just a photograph of an angel statue in a graveyard somewhere, which could also be a mid-90s hardcore record. It's
for sure. Yeah, it could be like something. Could be from a band called or late '90s German metalcore.
Yeah.
But I also like Azketem, Azketem, an effective use of a filter. It's kind of weirdly green.
Yeah. So this is a one of the newer death metal meets hardcore type bands, but it's different. Would you say it's pretty substantially different from most of that ilk? Well, all of which we like, don't get us wrong. Because we're big fans of Zabalba and a lot of the modern beatdown bands that are cribbing from death metal. But this comes across kind of differently, would you say?
I agree. I think you've got a good read on how it's different. I think I basically agree. So death metal, this what I like to call, I don't know, what should we call it? Post-deathcore? There needs to be a term for this because it is death metal meets hardcore, but it's not deathcore as we understand it. So bands like Zabalba, No Zodiac, 100 other bands are doing a death metal hardcore fusion, but the death metal ingredients tend to revolve around one of a few things, and those are usually going to be Stockholm, Swedish death metal, Entombed, usually, Bolt Thrower, that's more popular in the hardcore scene, and bands or guys coming from the hardcore scene to make this music, or kind of New York death metal, which has always had a hardcore streak. And there's some NYDM on this, but I would say the real death metal ingredient here is Tampa death metal. Specifically, a lot of early Cannibal Corpse, as well as a little bit of Morbid Angel, and some of the better parts of Obituary or Deicide. And it's surprising just how much of an impact this has on the music as a whole. Because, it's kind of easy to see where everything configures if you're using Stockholm or Bolt Thrower or New York death metal as your death metal ingredient. But Tampa's a little different because Tampa never really had that super substantial hardcore influence. New York death metal was heavily derived from early sort of tough guy leading into beatdown hardcore. Stockholm had a lot of kind of early hardcore punk, the stuff that was bleeding into crust later on. And Bolt Thrower. Yeah, and Bolt Thrower obviously comes from the D-beat and crust scene in general. And stenchcore. Tampa, that's a little bit different. The way death metal is operated over there has always been sort of singular and very influential on stuff like Finnish death metal and some of Western European death metal, but not so much in this streak. I found this very interesting. I like this record a lot. I don't think it's fully formed yet. I think that the next record might be a big deal.
But I think this is a really promising start. Also worthy of note, these guys are from Ohio, but not affiliated, apparently, with Maggot Stomp in any way, which is its own sort of death metal by way of hardcore scene.
I was going to say, yeah, if there's anyone crossing over towards not already hardcore associated death metal, it's the Maggot Stomp guys, but the Maggot Stomp seems more to be people writing death metal that has a kind of crypto hardcore aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this seems like these songs are structured like hardcore songs, overtly have hardcore beatdown. It's sort of more honest. There's like overt hardcore structuring in it. It counts as a full length if you treat it as a hardcore record.
Yeah.
Right? 20 minutes, sure. And it's and all of those death metal ingredients are placed at the service of hardcore structures. Also, I guess the Maggot Stomp stuff is more incantation worship kind of death metal.
Yeah, there's a little bit of incantation on this, but this is heavily indebted to Cannibal Corpse for the main death metal parts.
Yeah, so I think like maybe in the notes before you'd really checked it out, you wrote something like, "Oh, incantation meets hardcore," and so I heard it that way in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know enough about Tampa aside from Morbid Angel. So, with your first sample, show me what's Tampa about this.
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting one because this is off the band's own track. The band title track, Hanging Fortress. Mm-hmm. And this is a sort of death metalized take on, the intro track to your tough guy beatdown hardcore record between 99 or like 98 and like 2004, where it's like, it's about your band. It's the mission statement. And for some reason on this record, it's halfway through. It should have been the first track on the fucking record.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So let's listen to it, because you listen to it and you will hear them shout out their own band name during it.
Oh, that's sick. This is also clearly the best track on the record.
I'm not sure it's the best track on the record. It's extremely good, but it's like, listen to this with something like Bury Your Dead or First Blood in mind, and you're going to get it immediately. So let's listen to just the entirety of Hanging Fortress. So, I've got this has a special place in my heart because I got into hardcore through the kinds of bands that would have a song named after themselves and they would just scream their own band name in the opening track of the album, which happens here. So clearly they're raised on the same hardcore that I was. You know, Bury Your Dead, First Blood, later on and more connected to death metal, Shattered Realm, which we can never
Shattered
talk
Realm,
about enough.
yes, we both love, yes.
Shattered Realm is from the Dead End Blocks Where Life Means Nothing.
Dude,
is
maybe I will
like,
do that as the outro track.
Yeah, that would be tight, man. Shattered Realm always deserves to be played. So yeah, but you can hear there, it's like, okay, so it's basically a hardcore, like a beatdown intro track, but a lot of the riffs are more derived from, like, the opening riff is very kind of obituary and autopsy, and then that middle riff is sort of like a simplified Morbid Angel riff. So clearly the death metal that they're pulling from is a little bit different.
And, yeah, and well-executed death metal riffs. I think the format of just death metal level, slightly simplified death metal levels of complexity in the riffs, with rigorous maintaining of hardcore structures, that's a good idea. Because you get some, like, you get a kind of, it demands that you, it's like creativity within restrictions, right? The parameters, you can't just start writing death metal songs, and you'll write more interesting things as you fit those death metal riffs into those hardcore structures than if you just let yourself go.
Yeah. Well, I think actually what this band...
Also, I really like that. Obviously, just the beatdown riff at the end, where they're just chugging on the root and going up to the minor 6.
There's some excellent beatdown stuff on this. Another band this reminds me a lot of, although they're more from the kind of brutal death meets beatdown side, is a band called Dysentery from Boston, who are a fucking outstanding band. I actually played with them a few years back, and it was an outstanding show. And they do 2-minute crushing brutal death meets beatdown hardcore songs. Like really embracing the basest elements of Boston hardcore along with like slamming brutal death. And this reminds me, oh dude, they're awesome. Dude, you would oh man, it was difficult for me not to murder an underage kid in the pit when I saw those guys live. But
yeah, make sure they're overage.
Make sure they're over it. It's fair. You know, if they're a skinny dude like you and they don't have X's on their hands, it's all fair game. So what were your impressions of this stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I thought that was the track that struck me the most at first. I think I might go. Yeah, no, we'll go to my next sample. We'll go to.
Yeah, that's fair.
They had this band had the daring to name a track after a Mastodon album. Probably the last Mastodon album that was any good. And yeah, so here's the beginning of Blood Mountain.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, that's tight.
Yeah, so I really like that last riff and the one that came in right before the beat, which is the one that came in before the beatdown.
Yeah.
So now that I'm listening for the right kind of death metal, which I wasn't before.
Yeah, I listened.
Morbid Angel riff.
Yeah, I listened to like a minute of this album. I was like, yeah, okay, so kind of like real incantation meets hardcore, but it's not incantation. That was just like one random segment I found. It is much more Tampa.
Yeah, so that's kind of like a Morbid Angel riff, but instead of being put in a riffy Morbid Angel song, they just take that little slice of the riff and turn it into a kind of mid-tempo beatdown riff, which I like.
Yeah.
Something that makes this really heavy, I think, is that on the parts that are quote-unquote mid-tempo, they're constantly pushing the tempo.
Yeah.
You could play that riff in a kind of baggy, over a kind of like baggy breakbeat, you know, boom, ba-da, boom, boom, and at a like 20 BPM lower, and it might sound kind of lame.
Yeah.
Or at least not as good. But there's this compression effect. Everything is sort of straining at the boundaries of the time it's been allotted. And it is, it's all going just a little bit faster than you expect it to, and it gives it that nice kind of like, you know, what we say, like the shotgun cocking charge up riff.
Yeah. Which is also
really
like
like that.
Well, that's also like a cryptopsy riff. Like that, Benedictine convulsions, you know, that kind of shit.
Yes, so it got that None So Vile thing. Maybe that's another influence here. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
because we talked about how
on
that
first bonus episode, we talked about how much like it sort of like precedes a lot of movements in hardcore, you know, in Boston and Connecticut.
Second bonus episode, I think. But we did None So Vile and Following the Voice of Blood. I think our first we did Incantation.
No, you flipped them around. It was definitely None So Vile. Yeah.
Okay. Well. Good. And I think like on that first riff, there's a nice sort of combination of death metal and hardcore within the riff itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like the turnaround on the first riff that came in set up the more hardcore the set up that Morbid Angel riff very nicely. I'm not as into the beatdown part of that, the part where it slowed down.
Yeah, that's not one of the better. I think there's some great beatdown sections on this record. That's not one of the stronger ones, so I agree with you on that.
That one's a little pro forma, yeah. Show me a great beatdown.
This one opens with a great beatdown. This is off the second to last track called Drown. And we're going to open with a giant beatdown, and it's got like a backward structure for this kind of music. Open with the beatdown, and then speed up and get into some of the weirder death metal ideas. So let's listen to about the first half of this song. So yeah, you got I really like the inverted structure of that song. I think that's a really interesting technique.
I really like that. I admit that when I was listening to this morning, I think this is the one track I somehow didn't get to. Boy, does that kill.
Oh yeah. It's this is a really good song.
The last couple riffs reminded me a lot of Japanese beatdown bands.
Really? Huh.
Something about it, just a feel, you know, a little bit of the. God, we haven't mentioned them in forever. A little bit of the Straight Savage style.
Straight Savage style, and also a lot of the sort of Japanese proto-slam stuff, like Vomit Remnants. That reminds me a little bit of some of the more beatdown stuff from them, off like Supreme Entity, shit like that.
But yeah, and I was saying to you at the beginning, like that, the way they opened that was basically a slam.
Yeah, I think the distinction these days between like slam and like a beatdown riff, it's kind of context. You know, it's like that would be like I could see that being a slam riff if it was like on a slam death song, but here I hear it as more owing to modern beatdown hardcore, like pseudo down tempo stuff. I mean, the whole kind of the way hardcore breakdowns and like that side of hardcore, the tough guy into beatdown into down tempo thing, is a much more gradual gradient than a lot of the stuff you see in death metal, I think.
Yeah. Anything else about that one, or just backward structure?
Well, I think that's interesting. I think that kind of changes it because it takes the emphasis off the breakdown as being the core of the song, you know, which is an important thing to do if you want to make a more natural version of this kind of stylistic fusion. I mean, if you're making songs that are...
I see what you mean.
Yeah, if you're making songs that are about breakdowns in the way that, for instance, a band like Zabalba does, or No Zodiac does, both of which are bands that I love, but they're fundamentally songs about breakdowns and about getting to them. And, you know, it's the focal point that everything revolves around. Here, fuck it, the breakdown's up front, and now we're going into the death metal section. It kind of changes the orientation of the song, I think.
I get that. Yeah, this band is... I really like this is really oriented around headbanging mid-tempo death metal riffs.
Yeah.
Which I like a lot. And I always wondered, why aren't these a bigger thing in death metal? So that idea of combining the death metal and beatdown thing while staying in the beatdown parameters helps produce this very intuitive, chugging mid-tempo thing. But there's like detail in the riffs that you wouldn't get. Detail in the riffs you wouldn't get from like the other kind of band that produces something like that, a Stenchcore, right?
Yeah.
But there's a totally different kind of detail in these riffs.
Definitely. Well, let's get to your last sample.
Yeah, so I got to this one at the end, and I want to play the whole song. This one is really good, and it stands out to me as a little bit different from the other ones. This is the last track on the record. It's called Killing You, and I really think it's a little bit long for a sample. It's 2 minutes and 40 seconds, but I think you kind of got to hear the whole thing, because it feels faster than it is.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, so I said the other one, Hanging Fortress, was the best song, but that's the best song on the record.
That's extremely good. Well, I really like, and this is going to sound weird coming from me, I really like the sort of like gestural structuring of the songs on this. Like, in the way that beatdown hardcore songs aren't really songs. Mm-hmm. The same thing kind of applies here, which is funny because I talk about a black metal band, they're actually doing songs, which is rare. I kind of like the stripped down, not really songs quality of a lot of these things. It's like several movements kind of hanging together, and the kind of stark minimalist quality of it is what makes it so extreme. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, so this song in particular, so I was trying to figure out what makes this one stand out, and I thought it'd be too easy for me to say, it's more abstract and minimal, which is what I say about everything. Right?
But then I said it for you, so it works.
Well, yeah, but you said it in a smarter way that was more relevant to the genre criteria here, right? It's like, and this is, again, effective use of, it's like, the structurally interesting parts of this are not coming from the quote-unquote more sophisticated music. They're coming from beatdown.
Yeah, and I think it's funny how just like modifying the type of death metal you inject into this changes the feel of the music so dramatically.
Yeah, it's not just that it's like different or new. It's that it's kind of just better in a lot of ways. It definitely stands out from a lot of those other bands. Certainly from the Entombed and Bolt Thrower basis, that's gotten pretty. Outside of a few bands, it's gotten pretty stale.
Well, that was amazing when it started up, but now, we've had several years of that, so now we have to expand our horizons.
We've had 10 years of that, bro.
I mean, the hardcore scene's had 10 years. Death metal scene's had like 6. So
okay, yeah,
but no, I think so. It proves that there's still blood left in the stone for this fusion of styles. Which is important. Yeah, well, there's still new ideas.
Potential, if anything. This is, so, like, the not really songs thing is well, it's like, it's not really songs, but there are more distinguishable, catchy events in that song than you'd get in the hardcore version of it, right?
Yeah. No,
and so that's part of the death metal thing. It's like, there's, like, 2 minutes and 40 seconds. There are, like, 5 things that happen, and they're all really cool. I think that we agree that the centerpiece of that is kind of the drawn-out single-string trem in the middle.
Oh, yeah, that like, hyper-primitive, like, proto-incantation riff. That's probably one of the moments that made me think of incantation on this.
I'd like to hear more stuff like that here. That is just extremely barbaric death metal riffing. Well, that is really cool.
Well, if you think about it, that's just kind of the... I mean, you can even perceive that in kind of a beatdown perspective of, like, the beatdown bands will have those simple tremolo riffs, like, hilariously simple tremolo riffs, before, it's like, before it breaks down solo guitar. Yo, it's Hanging Gardens 2020. What the fuck is up, Boise, Idaho? And then they go in. That's
right. But here, that's made the center. And
it's more sophisticated because they're death metal guys. In contrast to Maggot Stomp. Maggot Stomp, I think, is guys from punk and hardcore playing death metal.
Yes.
These are, I think, death metal guys who happen to really like beatdown hardcore. So it's coming from...
One of them is wearing sweatpants. Yeah.
One's wearing camo. But those are also death metal things, to be fair.
True.
No, I think... I think this is very promising. I don't think it's totally put together yet. There's nothing wrong with any of it. There's just, like, places I could see this getting tightened up. And, just kind of small touches to really accentuate these tracks. But I think the next record, I think that could be a big deal in this style.
That tremolo riff, even though it's so minimal, that has a real melodic character to it. Mm-hmm. It's got a shape. It's memorable, but you could never hum it. You have to listen to it again to get that feel. And they're continuing to do hardcore things under it rhythmically, which is great. Gives this sort of stretching tension. If you want to develop a more quote-unquote melodic aspect in this music, I think you could do it from things like that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I think you came around a little bit more on this record. I think you weren't, because you said, like, in the notes, it's hard to kind of get my hooks into this, but I feel like you're kind of coming around on it.
I think in the morning, I was just tired. I listened to this first thing. I was, like, just, tired, hanging out with my girlfriend.
Yeah,
I knew it wasn't the right setting. At this point, I've had 3 cups of coffee. I get it now.
I mean, what you really need is, like, 4 beers.
I do think the 4 tracks we picked out are
the strongest,
the standout ones. Yes.
Yeah, I think the kind of the back half of this record is where it really starts to shine. I mean, there's good stuff on the first few tracks, but that's where it really comes together.
No, I'd agree. Hanging Fortress and Drown and Killing You in particular are just really good.
Oh yeah, those are giant. And I also like how the shout out of the band name on Hanging Fortress is during the kind of like bass solo part. Kind of a different spot from where you would expect for the beatdown shout out track. Just
nice.
Showing a different side of the band. So anyway, Hanging Fortress, Toledo, Ohio. Really good record. Looking forward to the next one. I think I'm really excited to see where those guys go, and hopefully they'll come to one of our respective states, because I will go to that show and I will beat the shit out of children that don't know what they're expecting.
All right. Well, that's just to be clear, that is a joke.
In Minecraft.
Yes. All right.
All right. Let's take a quick break, and we'll get to our final record of the night.
How's it going? Connor here from Oncology, and you're listening to Terminus.
All right, and we are back with our final record of the night. So, oh boy, Glistening with the Anti-Natalist. So this is a guy that I'm not familiar with, or I wasn't familiar with until I stumbled across him. And it's really exactly the kind of guy that I should be familiar with, right? So one guy just goes by Z, or the Extinctionist, and he's got something like 15 projects over the years, most of which revolve around kind of DSBM. It seems like there's some other stuff that's like a little bit noisier, a little bit more ambient, but his home is DSBM. And he released a promo single for this record a couple weeks back, and as soon as I heard it, I was like, well, shit, we need to cover this, because this is right up my alley. And then I ended up listening over the course of today, while we were waiting to get the show started, some of his other projects, and all of it's very good. So this is a rare case where we have a hyper-prolific guy doing raw tape black metal who's actually doing excellent music. And I think you'd agree that is a real rarity.
Yeah, for sure. It's very... stylistically, it would be very difficult. If you just overall explained what this sounds like, it would be difficult to distribute from a bunch of bands that... or to distinguish from a bunch of bands that neither of us finds interesting at all.
Yeah.
And it is, it's well done, and, like, there's a lot of songwriting work and a lot of invention and passion that distinguishes it from some of these bands that seem more like exercises in aesthetics.
Yeah, this is a guy who clearly takes the... I'm guessing this is a guy probably around our age, maybe slightly younger, who grew up, like me, with DSBM as a centerpiece of his listening, and has taken that, even after DSBM has sort of fallen apart as a major stylistic movement, he's kept it going. That this is still where his kind of black metal mind centers. And I was really impressed by this record, I gotta say, kind of up front. After listening to the whole thing, I think there's really fascinating ideas on it, tying into a lot of the stuff that we've talked about just on the past few episodes, while we've been covering kind of like depressive or depressive adjacent stuff. And no, yeah, this is excellent music. I really want to get in touch with this guy because clearly this is a guy with a distinct, concrete musical vision, which is a rarity, especially in this sort of raw cult tape black metal scene that he is accidentally a part of just because of where we are today.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he listens to the same things those guys listen to, right?
I think
I'm sure he likes LLN.
Yeah, he's definitely listening to LLN. He's definitely listening to emo, and he's listening to it seriously. You know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I think that he's like he follows us on YouTube. I think he's subscribed to us with Extinctionist Records, something like that.
Yeah, he did back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, shout out to Z. I know your first name accidentally because I think one of your friends commented with the wrong thing and doxed you a little bit, but you're a good man. And yeah, we're definitely going to get in touch. So, how would you describe this? Okay, so it's DSBM. It's got the emo in it. It's got some of the kind of jangly, kind of Smith stuff in it. I think there's a lot of connections between this and the Axis of Light EP we reviewed much earlier on in the show's running.
That's true. This does sound like that.
Yeah. What are you detecting from this? Because this is I know this is
the other. You have a good list of bands that we've covered that this is like. You should run through that first.
Yeah. So there's touches of Ulduan Gash. There's touches of the stuff that Damien Master does over on Colloquial Sound Recordings, Axis of Light, Cemetiere, which was just a few episodes ago, and kind of the best parts of the what we are now calling raw tape black. You know, all these, especially kind of New England derived from kind of French vampiric raw black metal and LLN
You'd
stuff.
say like the good version of that would be something like Sanguine Relic.
Yeah, I would say of those bands, Sanguine Relic is one that sticks out to me as being particularly good.
So, yeah, why don't you play your sample because it ties into that. I have a very distinct idea of what this sounds like, and both my samples have to do with that. So
okay, cool.
Play on that. Yeah.
So, we're gonna listen to the first half of a song called "It Is Better to Be Nothing Than to Be Anything." And this is just fascinating stuff. And there is a giant emo riff on this that, if you listen to the show, you know what I'm a sucker for. And you'll hear it and you'll be like, oh, this is for the death metal guy. So let's just listen to the first half of this track and see what we get. So obviously, that giant riff, that giant emo riff with that breakbeat under it from the drum machine is just, that's a like top 10 musical moment of the year for me. That's like comparable to the end of that opening track off the Axis of Light EP where it goes full emo, and oh man, that touches me right in the feels, man. It's like, oh, that's so good. It's so good. It really embraces the best parts of raw tape black while shucking away the very kind of like mannered quality, because this guy is clearly a very sophisticated guitar player. You know, he's talented on the instrument.
Well, and he's also just trying to write good riffs.
Yeah.
And writing good riffs. And the riffs are kind of it's not hiding behind hiss or sort of remote or gauzy production.
Yeah, it's very upfront.
Just plain and upfront. Yeah, you get some loud guitars and some drums, and that's it.
I think he's probably...
Is the drums a drum machine?
I think it's a drum machine. I would assume so. But I do think that he is just playing, like, probably playing into a tape recorder, like a 4-track, you know? He's got a couple guitar lines. He's got probably a drum machine playing out of an amp or something into the tape recorder, and then he does vocals over it.
Cool.
Something like
so
that.
He's playing it all at the same time, basically.
Yeah, because you can hear parts. You can hear parts on this record where it's like the tracks are like coming in or dropping out a little too early or too late.
Yeah, it does sound live. That makes sense. You're much better at
production stuff. Yeah.
You're much better at hearing that than me, but that makes sense to me. So he's... Yeah, explain to the people... I mean, do they know what half of our listeners know what a breakbeat is, half probably don't. What does it mean that you heard that in this context? I agree, some of the percussion choices throughout are just more interesting than what you get with...
So I guess a breakbeat... I mean, it's an electronic music term. A breakbeat is derived specifically from the Amen break. So this is from it's from a soul track called Amen Brother from 1969. It's a soul group called the Winstons, and at one point I've listened to the whole track, and at one point everything breaks away, and the drummer, just kind of improvising, does this kind of aggressively syncopated snare beat. And that is what is now known as the Amen break, which is a fundamental part of more aggressive styles of electronic music. And he's using kind of a variation of it here. It's one of those things...
Yeah, like more stuff like drum and bass.
Yeah, drum and bass, and, some like aggressive jungle stuff does it.
Breakcore jungle, yeah.
Breakcore is based on the Amen break.
I've also
much.
heard the word breakbeat used to refer just to hip hop beats in general, intensely syncopated. But maybe that's a.
Well, I think
get what you mean. That there's, in the strong sense of the term, it's one of these fractured. It's interesting that it's called a breakbeat because of the Amen break. I've heard of the Amen break. I didn't realize it was just. Oh, duh! That's why it's a breakbeat.
I believe that's the origin of the term breakbeat, and hip hop beats using these kind of aggressively syncopated stuff. It's a descriptive term. It doesn't necessarily need to be literally the Amen break, but this sort of like very snare heavy, aggressive, kind of high tempo stuff. I mean, I would argue there's stuff in like Godflesh's Christbait Rising that features basically a breakbeat in it.
Oh, that's probably true. Yeah, I think he listened to a bunch of that music.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I have no doubt.
People who listen to this show, like, Venetian snares or Aphex Twin are things that metalheads like that have those.
Yeah. Both of which are outstanding, and if you're a metalhead and you're not listening to Venetian snares or Aphex Twin, you need to go and listen to that, because that's going to inform a lot of shit.
I think Venetian Snares is a metalhead.
I believe he is. Well, and he's got friends or kind of associated acts like Drumcore. Drumcore is a project that a guy does that straight up combines aggressive Venetian snare style break beats with straight up like Slayer samples, and it's fucking awesome. Drum corps is great. So yeah, but this is a whole thing that we've been talking about, and real black metal musicians have been talking about, which is the influence of electronic music on black metal. I mean, we were talking about that last episode with Carved Cross. I mean, and Burzum was listening to Tangerine Dream and Kraftwerk the whole time. It all feeds into each other.
Yeah, so yeah, interesting drumming decisions, makes sense. At the beginning of that song also leads off with this kind of black speed metal riff, you know, this kind of ripping riff. And it kind of reminds me, it reminds me of a record I listened to a lot. And I was just listening to it the other day and thinking, God, people never pay attention to the speed metal licks on this album.
Yeah.
Or a lot of other things about it. And I thought, yes, sounds a lot like Corellian Satanist Madness. I think this album, I think his default style, although clearly it goes way into emo and other kinds of territory, and it uses the breakbeats, but the default style is something like fractured and broken version of Corellian Satanist Madness.
Oh, I can see that, yeah.
And a lot of the riffs have that kind of muscular, epic quality that you wouldn't normally expect in this music. But let's go to a few, like 30 seconds into I No Longer Need, and you'll hear what I mean.
All right, let's do it. So is that you're saying the notes? That's literally the opening riff to Corellian Satanist Madness.
Yeah, I assume most of our fans have heard it, but maybe we should sample it just because it'd be funny. I'm not knocking him for lifting this also. My comment is mostly like, you know, he did lift a very distinctive riff and do something that's very close to it, but he's adjusted it, he's recontextualized it, it's not exactly the same riff, and the whole context just makes it totally different.
All right, well, let's just listen, in that case, let's just listen to like the first minute of Corellian, and
all right, cool.
Give it a shot.
werewolves night.
Oh, I don't even know what he's saying there, but something about werewolves and blood.
It usually is.
So you heard what I meant, right?
Yeah, I get that. Well, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I was talking the other day about, it's like, oh, we've got a black metal vocabulary. Like, so, I mean, I don't care. It's like, yeah, I mean, everyone's ripping that sort of thing off.
Well, yeah, but the interesting thing is something I've thought about with Satanic, with that particular album, is the guitar playing on it is at such a higher level than almost every band that borrows Satanic Warmaster stuff.
Yeah.
The stuff they lift is usually from Strength and Honor, and they miss what's cool about that, and they kind of blend it together with Sargeist. The only band I've really heard who nails the Corellian Satanist Madness type thing is Finn.
Oh, okay.
And then they kick it up a notch. I mean, we've heard a few more on the show that have a distinct mark of that I couldn't remember particularly now.
Yeah.
But I think it's influenced some of the modern French knightly stuff a bit too. But
yeah, they're all pulling from Satanic Warmaster.
But as far as stuff that really sounds like Corellian Satanist Madness, there's very little of it. What distinguishes it are these kind of big florid chords, and also this kind of and the stompy quality combined with that, obviously, and the speed metal licks that pop up throughout it, which are one of the most exciting things on the record, and that nobody has
like
bought
eaten by rats.
Yeah. But also, just there will be leads like da 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 da. There's like, or yeah, sort of. That's on later on this song, right?
Yeah.
People don't lift that. This guy listens to that, so he's really seriously paid attention to Satanic Warmaster, and he's like, that's his guitar template for this, I think, and he's put it in a totally different context in a way that's pretty distinctive, and that's good.
Yeah, I think he's got a different guitar template for every project. Like, I was listening to another one that he does called Vorbkt. It's like VORBKT, which is much more like traditional, like slow suicidal black metal. Like
Vorbkt of the Boreal Valley.
Is that
first boss on Dark Souls 3? But
is it?
No, it's Vorbkt.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But he's and that is like the main guitar style there, I think, is pulled from Thy Light, a South American depressive black metal band that's actually become very influential. So I think he's got a guitar paradigm for each project, probably. And it's probably Satanic Warmaster for this one. Mm-hmm. So you've got a second sample, though, off the opening track, which is probably up there of, like, songs of the year for me. This opening song is like, holy fuck, dude.
So, yeah, this is Distant Realm of Bygone Sorrow. And this also gets at the Satanic Warmastery vibe. The idea that this record has a surprising undertone of this kind of heroic feel.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
There's like big triumphant moments, which is funny given the the subject matter of this project. So.
Yes. Yeah. Some of this sounds maybe a little more affirmative than you'd expect. So.
All right. Let's check this out.
This is off Distant Realm of Bygone Sorrow.
So that is like, oh man, that riff, that da 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 da. Holy shit, dude! It's like the most obvious riff in the world, but it hasn't been done before. It's amazing how many obvious riffs there are out there that haven't been done. You know.
Well, the one before it is. I mean, that one at least. That one has really good phrasing in it. Da, 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 da. You might expect someone to have done, but the way he develops it is really good.
Well, it's like honestly, it's like an Amon Amarth riff. You know, I've written riffs like that derived from like One Cent from the Golden Hall and like the Crusher and the Avenger. You know, it's simple. It's like the same scale run just brought across kind of a consonant chord progression.
Well, the riff before it, though, that's an obvious riff, right? Da,
Yeah.
da, da, da. But it's awesome. And yeah, so these are both very kind of charging medieval warrior riffs. These are sort of life-affirming and triumphant. And, you know, definitely a little bit of... Definitely jars a little bit with the subject matter, but I like it a lot. It's while we were listening to it, you were like, bro... You were like, if there was an album all of this, you would love it, right?
Yeah, when the D beat kicked in under the giant triumphant riff.
The other person who does that is Satanic Warmaster.
Yeah.
Most black metal bands do not use D beats as the default default ripping beat.
Oh no, I think that a ripping album of triumphant DSBM D beat stuff would be the perfect album for both of us. We would be done.
You know who already wrote it? Martyr did it.
Well, I mean, was it like sad and triumphant enough though?
Oh, I mean, I could do without the sad part.
I need the sad part. That's part of my bloodline, you know.
But you know, Satanic Warmaster does have this touch. Satanic Warmaster. Another thing people often miss is that there's this touch of melancholy to it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I pick up on that immediately.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, I would also love it if it was sad as well. But Martyr Road has a great record. Maybe we'll play that at the end of the show.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like this. I don't love the record as a whole because I just don't. You know, I tend not to like stuff that tries to channel misery particularly.
Yeah, I get that.
Although there are I mean, obviously Mutilation I love, you know, or really appreciate. I don't listen to it on the thing.
Yeah.
There's very much a Mutilation kind of Vampires of Black Imperial Blood thing, because that also has some very things that in another context might be kind of soaring, noble melodies that are kind of...
become kind of putrid and corrupted, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So I think this is a very, very good record. I'm just not the target audience for it, right?
Oh, okay, that's fair. Record. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want that total, you know, the chivalric black metal album that this guy obviously doesn't want to write, right?
No, I think we firmly established that one of my touchstones in Extreme Metal is misery. So.
Yes. I think for me, the last, the thing I'll say on this note, and then I'll let you round it out, is like, on what you love about it, is like, yeah, for me, there's like straight up riffs on this that I hate. Like the indie rock riffs. Not the emo kind of stuff, but there's stuff that sounds like Slint on here.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's just obviously... But the point is, it doesn't matter that I dislike it, because that's, not only just that it's not my thing, but it's like, this is very honest music. It is very not trying to please anyone.
Yeah.
And it's pretty original, and certainly bringing in this kind of jangling, peppy but uncomfortable American indie rock thing fits very well with the concept.
It's I would argue that this is part of the whole greater North American black metal idea, that we've been touching on. I mean, you've got the emo influence, you've got some of these kind of weird, kind of pentatonic melodies, and this is a guy who is actually, weirdly enough, originally from Newfoundland, who moved down to Seattle. So, he's got a couple different spheres of the North American sound operating right now. But let me get to the last sample to round this out. So, this is off a track called a world-ending reverie. And I'll actually kind of put my comments up front for this one, just so you're kind of primed to hear it. So, here's something that we have talked about, or more that I've talked about, is especially in these North American black metal reviews. What makes North American black metal? What makes greater American black metal? Well, it's part of it is emo. Part of it is this kind of suburban emo quality. But another thing that I've been touching on a lot lately, and I think we got a good response. I think it was from Efernock about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the Efernock emailed us regarding a review, and he was
sent us a great email that I still have not had to. I need to send it in equal,
it's like a
reply that does it some justice.
This amazing 2-3 page email to us.
It's a piece of literature.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Where we were talking about how I had mentioned how some of the melodies reminded me of older singer-songwriter stuff in the U.S., specifically Bob Dylan, and he said that wasn't something that I recognized before, but yes, I love Bob Dylan, and I love the things that he talks about, not to get into too much detail for a private email. But prime yourself with that, and let's listen to this section off A World-Ending Reverie. Ultimately, that's not really a black metal song, is it?
No. I was saying to you while you're listening to it, those could be like Modest Mouse riffs or something.
Yeah, there's definitely indie stuff, but I mean the thing that I pull from it is, like I said, 60s singer-songwriter shit.
Oh, like like if you acoustic guitar to that or something.
Yeah. Bob Dylan keeps coming up, and I think Simon and Garfunkel is a big part of it. Maybe some like Joni Mitchell, if you want to get really abstract with it, because I grew up listening to that stuff through my mom, and it's interesting, because I think a lot of these guys are
kind
kind
of black metal version of Diamonds and Rust.
You could do a weird triumph.
Oh, that's Joan Baez, right?
That's Joan Baez. You could do a weird triumphant black metal version of like The Times They Are a Changin'.
Oh, sure, yeah. You could do a lot of cool Bob Dylan covers. Yeah,
definitely.
You could do an unironic version of Masters of War.
Yeah.
I guess an ironic version of it. Yeah. You know what I mean. Yeah. It's But yeah. So, yeah, I hear that for sure. And, you know, the thing that I like about this song is... Or yeah, this is one of the best songs on the album.
Yeah.
And the indie rock affinity's not for me. However, what gets me about it is it does have the kind of stomping, doggedly stomping black metal quality
Definitely.
to it. With the sort of halting drums there. And as far as the sound he's going for, this is, world-ending reverie, sort of walking around lost in a apocalyptic daydream.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely captures that feeling, and it sounds sort of... It has the ecstatic quality of some of the earlier stuff, but in a much more sort of, I have already lost everything and I'm looking forward to losing more kind of quality.
Yeah, it could be an alternate outro track to the end of Fight Club as the skyscrapers are coming down, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing I appreciate on this record, to kind of wrap things up, is its honesty and, you know, not to get too kind of elitist is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. But it's good to see a guy...
I mean, we are elitists.
We are elitists, but
we try not to have sticks up our ass.
But not to draw too much attention to stuff like the method of distributing your music. It's cool to see. It's cool to see a raw tape black guy doing shit the way they did back in the 2000s. You know, like there's 20 copies of this tape. You can email him, or you can buy it on Discogs, that's more options than we used to have back in the day. You know, there were many times where I just stuffed cash into letters and sent it to distro guys with my list of requests, and they would send it to me. And
yeah.
I just, you know, I respect the fact that this guy is just... He really doesn't seem to give a shit. This is a passion project. And all of his projects are passion projects. He's doing his own thing, you know? I mean, he's definitely not living making music like this. It's just, this is who he is. And I think it's rarer and rarer to find people like that these days.
Yeah. I think this is a pretty unique project that is has something special going for it. And like we said at the beginning, sort of has affinities with this style that's very popular right now, but sort of is a lot bolder.
Yeah, that's fair. So yeah, Glistening, the Anti-Natalist. If you want a copy of it, well, you can't get it off Bandcamp because he charges $1,000 for it there. So you stuff some money in an envelope, or you send him an email, and you can get the tape that way. And I remember the days when that was standard, and much respect to him for doing that.
Nice.
So what do we do for an outro, man? I mean, we were talking about Shattered Realm earlier, and you were talking about someone else.
I think we're gonna go for... I think you'll love this. I think our listeners might be a little more interested. I think I know you've got to go right after this, but these songs are really short. You need to at least hear 30 seconds of this with me.
That's
you gotta
fair.
listen to
We can do that.
Martyr Dude off of List. This comes in a tradition of sort of... There is a tradition of epic sounding, melodic, deep D-beat. It's also real D-beat, or, cross.
Yeah.
Going back to like From Ashes Rise or whatever. But this is... they've clearly been listening to a lot of Toke.
Okay.
During this.
Sounds sick.
So let's just start with... let's go with the title track, List.
Oh, and, before we do it, I guess I should say... Thanks a lot for listening, guys, and we will talk to you next week.